won't you be, please won't you be my neighbor? Hey neighbor. That song is actually very personal to me because I heard that song when I was 6 years old, and it's the song that made me want to become a jazz musician. I'm currently 30 years old. I've been playing the piano since I was 6 years old, and at 6 years old I first heard that song on PBS. And at 6, you don't really quite have a handle on your emotions and how you interpret how you feel. But I knew that when I heard that song, when I heard the piano, playing, I knew that this is what I want to do. So my father played piano, so I said, "Hey Dad, can you teach me how to play the piano?" "Sure, son." So we started piano lessons, which was literally one of the worst decisions you could ever make at 6 years old. Because he's my father and he's also my piano teacher. And so at 6, I would rather be outside playing with my friends, playing Tonka trucks and riding scooters. And instead of that, I was practicing scales, learning how to read music, practicing arpeggio. So I really despised my existence at that time at such a young age. But I actually grew to love it. And it instilled a huge amount of discipline in me and consistency. And so, we kind of grew in that father-son, student-teacher relationship, but at the same time, I was really, really enamored with jazz. So I'd go to the library, I asked my dad to take me to the library, and I'd check out these CDs of Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Kenny Kirkwood. And so I'd literally check these CDs out, and I'd go home, and I'd wait for my parents to fall asleep, and I'd lay down in front of the stereo and plug these headphones in and literally listen to these jazz CDs until I fell asleep at the stereo. My parents would wake up pretty upset because I wasn't in bed. I was laying on the floor with headphones all over my face with drool. So, I had that gap of, playing classical music and wanting to be a jazz musician. So as me and my father progressed, he would say, "Son, I need you to learn these pieces and get this far in the book by month's end or the next 2 months." But I would actually finish the book in like a week. I would finish in half the time. So he knew at that point in time that I needed to have another teacher because I definitely outgrew him. So he signed me up for a private teacher. Her name was Dorothy Louie, and that was an even poor decision on my part to agree to take piano lessons from her. She was extremely strict. She was a short little lady from Taiwan, and I was literally averaging in middle school and high school practicing 3 to 4 hours a day. Wow. And I knew that music was what I wanted to do, and I was only playing classical for lessons, but I was studying jazz on my own time. And so I had my own band in high school, my own jazz trio, and we'd gig and do the whole nine, but she decided that I needed to compete. So she put me in competitions, and that was new for me because I wasn't really aware of, how playing a piano piece in front of a person could translate into being judged and scored at the time. So I was very, very, very afraid. I didn't want to do it. And so the first competition I had definitely stands out in my memory because I was so nervous and so, I don't know how I'm going to do this because I had to play 3 pieces from memory. And they were very, very challenging pieces, and they had to be from different periods of music. So what I did was I figured the best way to know that you know a piece of music is to be able to play it with your eyes closed. So to supplement that, what I did was, again, when my parents would go to sleep, you got a digital keyboard or piano, and I'd take headphones and plug them in, and I would actually sit in the dark and play all my pieces in the dark from memory. So that was to challenge myself, because if there's no light and I have no visual guide as to what I'm playing, the muscle memory will take control, and that's how I know that I'll know this piece no matter where I'm at, no matter who I'm playing in front of. So I would do that, and I had this issue with sweaty palms, so I'd sneak in my parents' room and steal the talcum powder. So I'd pour talcum powder on my hands to stop the sweat, and I'd hide the talcum powder under my bed. And so they'd wake up, and my mom would be getting ready for work, like, "Where's my powder, hun?" And she would know where it is, but you'd come outside and see talcum powder all over the little splotches on the floor, or on the keys and things like that. So it was really innovative for me. So the competition came, and the first 2 pieces I played really, really well. I was proud of myself. I was like, okay, I did good. Whether I win or lose, I did well. I was happy with my performance. The last piece was a very hard piece. I believe it was by Rachmaninoff, and I lost my place. So in the true spirit of the art, I supplemented the loss of where I was in the music with actually improvising some jazz in between to get me where I needed to go. So I'm like, oh wow, I can't believe I did this, because this is an actual audience where I have to bow, I have to do a lot of formalities, and jazz is not a welcome art per se in this arena. So I did that. I thought it was cool. You know, I walked off the stage like that was pretty cool. Did that, and I believe my teacher was very much not enthused with that. She kind of gave me this look. It was like, why would you do that? And so I didn't know if I was going to win or if I was going to lose. And the judges, they did their deliberations. I was waiting to lose. I didn't really care. I was like, I'm glad it's over. So the results came in, and I actually won. And I went to regionals, and I won there, and then I went to the finals, and I came in second place. And so throughout the years, basically my whole life was outside of school and high school and all that jazz was competing. And so I compete, I play at church, I play jazz. I picked up several other instruments. I started playing the trombone and the trumpet, and I also play the bass guitar. And my first instrument actually is the flute. And so I decided I wanted to be a professional musician, but the lifestyle didn't quite work out. So I decided to major in finance, go figure. So that's what I do full time, but music is still a huge part of my life. I had a gig. I just recorded on a Christmas album last month, and so it's the thing that I love the most, and outside of my family, of course, and it's the thing that brings me great joy, and it's what I use to share joy with others. So won't you be, please won't you be, please won't you be my neighbor.
Back in a previous life, I owned a bakery. It was a very successful bakery. I had a wonderful, plump little wife, a house full of children, and I was a happy man. But one day, this old, ugly woman came into my bakery. She walked with a hump, bent over, a squinty eye. And she comes up to my counter and orders a dozen cookies. I would like to order a dozen of those St. Nicholas cookies, please. So I go over to the counter and I count out 12 cookies. I put them in a bag. And I noticed the old woman giving me the mean eye. She says, I asked for a dozen cookies. A dozen is 13. I said, no, a dozen is 12. I'll give you a dozen cookies. No, I want a dozen. I says, I knew what she was leading to. But some bakers, they give an extra cookie to people. For whatever reason, I don't know. I don't agree with this. I don't like giving away my food. I work for this. I have a family. She insisted, no, I want a dozen cookies. I said, I'll give you 12 cookies. That's what you get. You can take it or leave it. So she's very well then. And she walked out the door without the cookies. From that day on, things went bad. Every cake I baked the next day was stolen by thieves. For the next week, every loaf of bread I baked was so heavy that it fell through the bottom of the oven floor into the fire. The next week after that, every loaf of bread I baked was so light that they floated up through the chimney and out, and I was frightened when I saw them floating past the rooftops. I knew at that point that this old woman has put a curse on me. I was terrified. Everything I baked came out wrong. Nothing tasted good. My donuts were atrocious. Then Then another day, this old woman comes back into the bakery, walking in, humped over her, squinty eye looking at me, asking for a dozen cookies. How could this woman come in after she has brought this bad luck on me and ask for her dozen cookies again? I told her, you're not getting 13 cookies. You get 12 cookies. No, I wanted 13. I want a dozen cookies. I said, no. Leave my store. But she left. Things just got worse and worse and worse. Every batch of cookies I made came out either burnt or undercooked. They tasted terrible. My customers were going away. I was struggling to feed my family. The only people eating my baked goods were me and my family, and I was running out of money. So one day I go to church to pray to St. Nicholas, who is the patron saint of merchants. So I go to church, down on my knees, and I pray, please, St. Nicholas, help me lift this curse from this old woman on my bakery. Then I make my way back to this bakery, make up another batch of St. Nicholas cookies, put them in the oven, wondering how are these cookies going to come out? Are they going to be burnt, overcooked? They're going to be undercooked, too much sugar, not enough sugar, too much cinnamon, not enough cinnamon. I don't know. But when I take them out of the oven, they look good. I put them out to cool. After they cool, I frost them, nice and beautiful. Take them and put them in the windows so people can see as they're passing by. Turn, standing before me is St. Nicholas himself. He didn't have his goldenrod or his bishop's robe or his funny looking hat like he has in the image on the cookies. But he had the white beard and his kindly eyes, and I knew that it was him. My knees were trembling. My legs were weak. I had to sit down on a stool. And I looked up at St. Nicholas. And he looks down at me. He says, I spent my whole life giving my money to the poor and the children. The Lord teaches us to be generous. What is one extra cookie to an old woman? I say, yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Put my face in my hands. When I looked up, he was gone. And I was like, oh, dear Lord, please forgive me. As I'm sitting there with my face in my hands, I hear the door open and his feet shuffling towards the counter. I knew it was the old woman again. She comes in, over her eyes squints. I knew what she wanted. She didn't have to speak. I go, count out 13 cookies, put them in a bag, and I give them to the old woman, free of charge, no charge. As she's going out the door, she says, the curse is lifted. From this day forward, 13 is a dozen. So from that day forward, I always gave 13 as a dozen. And from that day on, 13 was a baker's dozen.
My wife and I love to travel. Every year it seems like we go on 3, 4, 5 different vacations ranging from a weekend to 2.5, 3 weeks. Just depends on what's going on that year, what deals we find on Travel Zoo or one of the other major websites. I have so much fun traveling with my wife. It's our biggest thing I think we have in common is like seeing different parts of the world, America, Europe, Asia. Every 5 years or so, there comes a vacation where things don't go quite right. 2006, we went to Spain. Had a 4-hour delay getting out of New York, and it threw off the entire trip. Everything got thrown off. By the end, we were like 3 days behind on what we were supposed to do, and Rebecca was freaking out. I just went with it. I had fun. In 2011, we took a 4-day trip over to Scandinavia for a wedding. Talked about that in the humor speech contest. Ended up wearing lipstick to put a big kiss on the bride. It was a little crazy. I don't remember all of it, but I do know I just went with it. This particular trip to Asia in 2016 was not one that was fun to just go with. Started out very well. Made it to Singapore after 30 plus hours of traveling, wandering through the airports, dragging our bags. We were tired, but we still managed to stay up and spend the day in Singapore seeing these beautiful gardens they have. The next day we boarded a cruise that was going to take us to Bali, Thailand, Penang, Kuala Lumpur. So looking forward to this cruise. We booked it in March of last year. We were really, really stoked. Out of Singapore, 2 sea days down to Bali. 3 days in Bali, which by the way is a really neat little island in Indonesia. It's the only island in Indonesia that still has a Hindu majority. The rest of the country is very Muslim. A little bit backward. Motorbikes all over the streets. It seems like everybody in Bali owns a motorbike. They're weaving in and out of traffic. We spent 3 days there driving around the island. It was so much fun. Rebecca was bit by a monkey at one point, but other than that, it was really a good time. Bali's down to the south of Singapore, and the next stop is Phuket, Thailand, way up to the north. 3 sea days between those 2 stops. I don't mind sea days. I lay around the boat, reading my book, eating good cruise food. It's so much fun to be on a cruise. Both the sea days and the shore days, to me, are just a blast. Unfortunately, second to last sea day on the way to Thailand, my father-in-law, a somewhat laconic man, started to come down with some problems. He had fallen in Bali, not too hard, but he banged his ribs, and the bruise on his ribs started to really bother me. He was having trouble sleeping at night. It was a lot of pain. So he and I went down to the medical center on the boat. They gave him some drugs, a little bit of pain medication, some codeine to help him sleep. We thought, okay, just needs a little help sleeping, a little reduction in pain. However, the next day, last sea day before Phuket, we were in a theater going to watch, I think, one of the comedy shows, and he was heading down the stairs and just kind of did one of these in front of me. I barely caught him before he fell. Wow, that was kind of scary to me. But he seemed okay, his mind was alert, he never lost consciousness or anything, and he said, just set me down, I'll be okay in a little bit. We put him down in the theater, we sat through the show, he said he was fine. We all went back to our rooms, but 2 hours later, my mother-in-law called our room and said, Dad can't get out of bed. He literally can't stand up. I went to his room, and sure enough, he was curled in a little ball, really shivering. We had to wheel him down to the medical center again. They ran some tests, and they said, he's too sick. We can't handle him here. You are going to have to get off the boat, all of you, and go to a hospital in Thailand. That was the end of our cruise. That night, we packed all our stuff, 2 weeks worth of things into our bags. We're on the first tender off the boat in Thailand. He took an ambulance with my mother-in-law to the hospital, and Rebecca and I followed in a little taxi cab full of bags. And the next week, we parked ourselves at a hotel, 5 minutes walk from the hospital while he recovered from what turned out to be a bacterial infection, influenza, and pneumonia, all at the same time. Now, by the second day, he was already feeling a lot better. We probably could have got home on the 10th. However, when I say just go with it,